Well, good morning, everybody. Man, it's been a while. I know I'm about 10 minutes early. We're not going to start in on any of the tech stuff here until, 10 o'clock. I want to give everybody time to get in here. But, I wanted to, let's start off with this. How's the audio coming? How's the video, audio, everything sound good? Are we too loud, too quiet? You guys tell me. What have we got? Everybody, let's hold off on questions for just a second. I want to get to as many of you as I possibly can. I want to do a little house cleaning first and decide if I want my glasses on or not. Perfect. Sounds great. Obviously, I pop in here. I wanted to come in a little early because this is the first broadcast from the new studio, right? And you guys know that, man, in Winder, it was a late night last night working in the shop, so I look a little tired. But anyway, we always had a challenge with the internet connection in Winder, and it wasn't uncommon. You guys that have been around for a long time, it wasn't uncommon for us to drop a signal come back in. And then the audio, one of my biggest problems with the audio there was, it seemed that the internet connection would drop more in the evenings than during the day. I was trying to do it during the day, but it was also very loud. And the internet connection was terrible, so I had to have all the guys shut down their cell phones from the internet connection and everything else. It was always a challenge. But what I'm stoked about this new place, guys, get this, is I actually have 1 meg upload and download, and it's all done on fiber optics and everything. And I've kind of got this studio set up a little bit. The other thing I was interested about here was, I don't have any acoustic panels or anything like that behind me. So if you guys hear any kind of echo or think that there might be a way that I could improve the audio quality, let me know, and I may hang some, foam panels up behind me or something like that. But anyway, I'm glad we're coming in well. I want to give a shout out to all of our members that are in here and hanging out with us. Say hey to you guys because you guys have been part of this thing for a very long time. Carrie Lewis, you'll notice. Carrie's been, I think Carrie was, Carrie was, if I'm not mistaken, the very first member to the channel, which is really, really cool. So thanks for being there, Carrie. Mr. Cox, good to see you in here, sir. It has been a little bit, and you and I will be having a conversation here very soon. Good to see you. Nick's a good fella. I only got to meet Nick for just a couple of minutes at Smokeout last year, and, he saw me pulling in, hopped up, we shook hands through the window of my truck. And it was so busy that we didn't have a chance to hang out, and I hate that, Nick, but thanks for being here, buddy. Mr. Hall, John Hall, thank you for being here, sir. This is the first time I recall seeing your name on a live, so welcome, glad you made it. Travis Hughes, he's also been with us a long time, my friend, thank you. Fred, is that Biasi? I hope I pronounced that right. If I didn't, I apologize. And Dewey. Everybody knows Dewey. And Dewey's got a pretty cool channel as well. It does a lot of tool reviews and things like that. So check out, I think it's still called Dewey Did It. Dewey, feel free to post a link to your channel here. Dewey's been with us for a long time, so thanks for being here, buddy. The Leifter from England. Thank you for joining us, sir. I appreciate you being here. So we got another Carrie. Chris Yu. Chris is another one. Been around for a long time. Good to see you, Chris. Thanks, pal. And Patrick, I think Spaz Cycle. Patrick Spaz Cycle, I like that. Thanks also for being a member. I believe this is the first time you've joined us for a live. Thanks for being here. And for those of you that have, we want to give some more people some time. I think, let's see. Yeah, we got about 5 minutes. Give people time to jump in. And so the format, for those who've never been here before, we kind of do. We try to run roughly about an hour. And one of the things I'll do is hit some, major topics. And, your comments, I try so hard to answer comments, guys, but you know what things have been like for me the past almost year now. With the enormous backlog at the shop, trying to finish as many bikes as we could so that we didn't have to move stuff to the new location. And then just I get emails and things from everywhere, but I also have to get work done. So I do look through the comments and things, and I utilize your comments guide me on good video content for later on down the road. And man, have I got a long list. So sorry I haven't been able to really answer your comments, but I do look at them. So back to the format thing. So typically when I open these lives, what I like to do is pick maybe 5 or 6 of the most commonly asked questions I get. And then once we get through those, Sam, good to see you, my friend. Thanks for being here. Once we get through those top 5 questions, then I open it up to you guys and just let you, ask a question. And I want to try to get to all of those questions, of course. And so kind of what I do is I look at your questions, what they are, and remember what some of the common comments that I see. And those are typically the ones that I try to address. So it's not a favoritism thing or anything like that, guys. So and then what we'll run that for about 45 minutes, give or take. And then the last 10 minutes or so, I do what I call a speed round. And so it gives you guys an opportunity. I don't mention anyone's names. It's just, the explanation sometimes are very short, but the goal is to answer as many questions as I possibly can in that last few minutes. So I start talking fast and rambling. So that gives you guys an idea of, kind of how this whole thing works. And feel free, I see a lot of you are putting questions in there already, and I've got my other monitor set up over here, and I am glancing over and looking at those questions. So just to give me an idea of what direction to go. So anyway, let me coffee. All right, so I'm glad this connection is going good. The audio, are you guys hearing, is there any kind of echo? Remember, this is my first broadcast from this studio. Are you guys hearing an echo or anything like that? Everybody says we're good. So, all right, awesome. So let's start off. It's 9:57. I figured now's a good time. We could go ahead and get started. So I've got a list here of the top 5 or 6, 6 questions. And 3 of them are tech related, and the other is what's up with Kevin sort of thing. So number 1, where's the new shop? Everybody wants to know the address to the new shop. So let me explain what's going on with that. So, we're there in Winder, and, you guys know we've got a pretty healthy backlog of folks that, have been waiting in line and paid deposits for parts and all that type of stuff. And so I won't be mass publishing the address of the new location. And what I found, and please understand, I don't say this with any arrogance at all. I actually enjoy visitors. I really enjoy meeting new people and, people that watch the channel and enjoy the channel and everything like that. I enjoy that quite a bit. But there was the big trade-off, a big problem. There in Winder, we had, on a daily basis, we had so many people that wanted to come in and see the shop, meet me and, ask tech questions and stuff like that. And it became quite a challenge, because as you know, we ran on a small staff, and I was the only machinist and doing the builds and things like that, was so, that type of work takes an incredible amount of focus. And then when you're getting, visitors that just want to stop in and see the shop, it can be quite a distraction. And I felt that it was an injustice for our customers, frankly, for me to be constantly pulled away, So, and then when you walk away just to say hello or something like that, and, your mind gets rolling, and then you step back in front of a machine and you're trying to maintain very, very tight tolerances. So you find yourself, you walk away for 5 minutes, it takes 10 minutes to get your head back in the game. What I was also surprised about is the number of people that wanted to come by the shop that actually didn't even own motorcycles. I was surprised at the number of viewers that watch our stuff that don't own and never plan on owning a motorcycle. It was kind of interesting. So it just became a point to where we then went to an appointment-only basis type thing, and I found that didn't work either. It's hard to say no to somebody that's come from multiple states away. Oh, wow. Turn that off. Oh, that's my Google thing. I don't want to be interrupted. So, we had these folks coming in and stuff. And so, anyway, long story short, I'm going to give you a general idea. I'm in Hickman County, Tennessee, which is about 45 minutes southwest of Nashville. And so if anybody wanted to come see the shop, then, you're welcome to email and we can set up an appointment or something like that. But it does have to work around the work schedule because, I'm the only guy now. And so, I'm the only one doing the machining, doing the engine building, doing the teardowns and everything else. So I did that largely in part because I wanted to regain that personal relationship, with customers. I'm still friends with people that I built engines for, 15 years ago. And so a large part of what I loved about this industry was building those relationships and getting to know people. And you get to a point that you're so busy, you can't do that anymore. And so, I wanted to maintain a very high level of quality and continue to improve on that quality. So it's creating more time, which, time's the only thing you can't get back. So I won't be publishing the address publicly, but of course, if we're going to be doing business, you give a call, that sort of thing, you'll know where we're at. Obviously, you'll have to. And then, if anyone wanted to visit the shop or anything like that, then it would have to be on appointment basis and then as the workload allows. So that's the answer to the question, where is the new shop? Now, on the second one, let's see who else jumped in. So, Sam, thank you very much. Glad to have you. Zev Griffin, thanks for being here, sir. Thank you for the kind words. Chris, Sam. Okay. Now, number 2. You guys might remember a while back I did that video on what's the best Harley engine. Now, I took a little bit of tongue lashing from some folks, and there was a couple of omissions that I left out of that video intentionally. I wanted to see how many people would wonder about the V-Rod and the Sportster. And the other common comments that I got on that was, I must just be a romantic. Several people mentioned that, my love for the shovel head. And then, of course, what about the Evo and all this stuff? Of course, I basically just mentioned the big twins. So the thing about the V-Rod and the Sportster, and one of the reasons I omitted those, V-Rod was vastly different than any other the Harley formats. And they've been out of production for a very long time. And I'm not going to pretend I'm not an expert on V-Rods by any means. I don't have a vast knowledge of those engines, their intricacies and things like that. So, I didn't have a direct opinion on that just because experience. I don't have very many people coming to me for V-Rod stuff. It's almost never, actually. But shortly after I released that video, I actually had a phone call with a friend of mine, Scott Fitzgerald Motorsports. And as any of you that are in the V-Rod world, Scott's been a friend of mine for a very long time, and I went up to his place a couple of times and stuff like that. Scott he's pretty much a V-Rod expert. The guy, he manufactures some great parts and things like that. But V-Rods were not without their issues. And it seems like sometimes when they did have an issue, it was catastrophic failure sort of thing. No, it wasn't very common, and they were very good, reliable engines, but they did have their issues. So sometime in the future, we're going to do a live with Scott. And see how many V-Rod guys want to jump in on that deal. So no question, the V-Rod was a fantastic engine. Now, as far as the Sportster, to a large degree, I would have to say mechanically, that was one of the longest running single engine type formats. That the Evo Sportster. And they were incredible. I mean, just absolutely incredible, reliable engines. And I've mentioned to many people that one of the things that I really liked about an Evo and a shovel, and I would have to put, Sportster in that category, is how bad those engines could be and still run. I mean, to the point you take them apart and just blow your mind. And I'll tell you guys a couple of quick stories you may get a kick out of on a Sportster. So actually just one story, and then we can move on because I want to get to your questions. So I was working somewhere, actually at a dealership. This goes back many years ago. I was working at a dealership for a little while as a service manager to just basically help them out a little bit. I think their service manager had quit. And they were a little short-handed and stuff. And the guy that owned the dealership was a good friend of mine. So I went in just to kind of help him out. Well, they had a lady that came in with a 1200, and she had just bought it, and it was a situation where it was she bought the 1200, and it was a, let's say, financial strain for her to be able to buy it. And so she wasn't, working with a whole lot of funds. And shortly after she bought it, she had a friend of hers install an air cleaner. Well, that air cleaner, one of the screws, backed out, got sucked into the intake, and what was remarkable about this is it got sucked into the intake. It did a little bit of damage to the piston, not very much. It didn't hurt the cylinder. I was astounded by this. So in other words, the piston had a little ding in it, right? And as crazy as it sounds, it was okay to run the piston. But the problem was it bent the connecting rod. And that absolutely blew my mind, that screw didn't just destroy the piston, that it actually bent the rod instead. It was pretty crazy. So, excuse me. So of course, this wasn't going to be covered under any kind of warranty. And this lady's trying to figure out what the heck she's going to do. And all the techs are like, the engine's cooked, got to replace the crank and stuff. So I'm standing there looking at it, and I looked at one of the techs and told him to go grab me a long extension, a 1/2-inch extension. And so I straddled the bike. We took the piston off. I straddled the bike. I put that long extension through the connecting rod, reached down and grabbed it like this and went, and bent it. Course, then put a pin, and that's how you check alignment of a rod on a case. You'll put a pin through your wrist pin hole there in the top of the connecting rod, and you rotate the crank over, and you make sure that it's parallel to the top of the engine case. And then you roll it back the other direction and make sure it's parallel to the top of the engine case. And so I rolled it, got up there again, and tweaked it a little bit, rolled it back a little bit more, tweaked it back a little bit more, and kept working with it until I got to the point that connecting rod that the wrist pin was now parallel to the case within a couple of thousandths, if I remember correctly. Now, if you look straight down the rod, you could see it had a little bit of a, like that to it, just a little bit. But rotating it over, the clearances and everything looked good. Of course, I explained to this lady that this would get the bike running, but by no means, is it 100% proper. And we put that sucker back together and just cleaned up the top of the piston where that little indention was up there, and put that old girl back together. And of course, it ran like a champ. So, interesting thing about Sportsters, and they can be very, very resilient. And so anyway, that was a Sportster experience. So I'm a big fan of Sportsters as well. No question, they'll run forever. It was a great engine format, but I was surprised at the number of people that made the comments about Sportsters and V-Rods, because here, really here in the South, you don't see a lot of people doing major modifications to Sportsters. Yes, there are some, but it's obviously not, hugely popular. So I admitted those two kind of for those two reasons, but there's no question, probably out of all the engine formats, the most resilient, ones were really the V-Rod and the Sport. Oh, anyway, number 2. Number 3, here's an interesting one. Let's see if we got any more new comments yet. So if you guys remember, this goes way back. I think this was probably about 3 years ago. It may have been about 4 years ago now. I think I've lost a lot of time. I did a video on gear drive versus chain drive cams, and that was really, I would say, the video that really, just blasted off this channel. I'd had the video up for several months, and then all of a sudden, it just, I guess the algorithm here grabbed it, and it just exploded. I think the video got like 100,000 views or something like that overnight, and it just, boom, subscriber count went up like crazy. And ever since then, I've gotten this question. Why can't you run gear drive on the outside and chain drive on the inside? All right, I've seen that question over and over and over and over. And the other question I've gotten is someone replaced their chain drive with a gear drive cam, and they look at the cam lobes and they look weird to them, and they think they were machined wrong. And I've had a ton of people send me pictures. Hey, I think these cams are ground wrong. Should I put them in? So And the reason a lot of folks have thought about that is because they see all these pictures of these failed chain tensioners on the twin cams, and they notice that the inner one doesn't wear quite as much as the outer. So their thought is, well, if they just use gear on the outside, that one wouldn't wear, and the inside one you'd get lot more life out of it. Well, here's what you got to think about. So when you're running a chain drive, those cams, when you're looking at the crank and the cam, if they're on a chain, they're running in the same rotational direction. Okay? They're both running in the same direction. It's a chain. On the backside, that's also, because you have the chain connecting the two, that's also running in that direction. All right? And so, well, technically it's the opposite direction because you're flipping side, but anyway, I digress. So think about this for a second. You're changing the rotation direction when you use gears, mating gear to gear. So now you have a gear, let's take a gear, put it on the crank. Then you've got a gear that's on the cam. Well, now you've reversed the rotation direction of the cam on the drive cam. All right, so engine cranks this way, your cam's now turning this way, right? Well, then when you have gears on the backside, that second cam, your front cam, is reversed direction again. All right, so you're going from one direction to the other. So you're actually changing directions twice. That means the cams have to be ground differently. And then in a lot of cases, when you run gear drive cams, when you start getting into higher lifts, because of the change in rotation, your lobes start getting very close to each other in some cases. So then that's one of the reasons why they have to change what the base circle of the cam. All right. So, the point just before open and close where the lobe goes up and down. And that's kind of what they mean by is a cam a bolt-in cam. I'm kind of going around the world here. A bolt-in cam is basically a cam that has the same base circle as a stock cam. And that's what allows you to run stock length push rods. All right. Now, when you start getting into higher lifts, in order for the cam lobes to clear each other, you have to make the base circle smaller. So when you make the base circle smaller, you now need a longer push rod. That's why you need adjustable push rods at that point, or custom length ones, because you've changed the base circle. All right. The lift can be the same, but you've changed the base circle. So that's the difference between a bolt-in cam and a cam that requires push rods. So when you start getting into changing the rotation of the cams, the timing of the cams and the lobes getting close to each other, and base circles and all that kind of stuff, it's one of those things that there hasn't been enough demand for that. You still need to check the inner one anyway. So no one's making a cam. You'd have to make cams specifically for that purpose. And nobody wants to do that. Just hasn't been enough demand for that. And you guys have been around for a long time. You may remember the conversion camshafts that they came out with that had, the older size inner base for your inner cam bearing, but the outer was machined larger for the later hydraulic cam plates. Well, then everybody started making, they were making cam plates and stuff to do that with. So you didn't have to run a conversion cam. Those were around for a little while. John Hall mentions, I thought a bolt-in cam was for the stock valve springs being able to take the lift without coil bind. That's true as well, John. Thanks for pointing that out. I forgot to mention that. And he's absolutely correct on that. So yeah, the bolt-in had to do with the valve springs as well. So typically, and it's just strange the way that it works out, typically a cam that would work with a stock push rod that would have a stock size base circle, where you cross that limit that you have to change that base circle, is right at about the same spot that you should look at changing springs anyway. Somewhere around in a twin cam anyway, 540, 550 lifts, somewhere around. So anyway, so yeah, I appreciate you coming out with that. All right. Number 4, putting in a 7-speed transmission, the Baker 7-speed. I've heard this question over and over and over again. It seems to be that there's still a lot of confusion about the gear ratios, the indicator, whether or not you have to tune the bike, and cruise control, whether or not it'll work. So here's the answer. If you put in a 7-speed transmission and do not have a tuning device, your cruise control will still work, but only in 7th gear. The reason is because your stock 6th gear ratio is the same as your 7th gear ratio in the DD7. Those ratios are the same. That's why your cruise control would work in the top most gear, but it wouldn't in the others. The other thing is that your gear ratio indicator on your dash would not work for any of the other gears. What would happen, though, is when you go into 7th gear, being it's the same as your stock 6th gear ratio, when you go into 7th, you're going to get a 6th gear light and a 6th gear light, and then your cruise control would work, and it would show 6th gear on the dash. Wouldn't show for anything else. So what happens when you put that 7-speed in, since all the other ratios are different than stock, you would need a tuning device that will allow you to program the gear ratios in the individual gears. So, but what happens is essentially when you're looking at, you only have 6 positions in the tuning software, say like in a Power Vision, you have 6 positions. So, so basically you take in where first gear shows in the software, you put in the 2nd gear calculated ratio and then keep moving forward like that. So, there's a couple different ways you could do it, but in reality, that's what you see on the dash. When it pops up and says 3rd gear, you're actually in 4th gear. So you just kind of have to think that way. But that's how you make it work so that your cruise control would work in the all other gears. So there's that one. And the next 2 are going to be pretty quick, and because I just wanted to get into y'all's questions as quick as I possibly could here. And I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to scroll back after I handle these last 2 things. I'm going to scroll back and look at some of your questions and pick some here. So anyway, so where'd I go after Sturgis? I did post in a video and mentioned, what happened, because here I'm up there and I'm starting to make videos and everything else. I made 2 or 3 videos. Where'd I go? Right after Mitchell, the day after Mitchell, there was a yellow jacket sitting in a beverage on a table one afternoon in front of the hotel. When I took a sip, that yellow jacket was inside that drink and I didn't see it. And when I took a sip, that sucker got stuck in my mouth and he was hitting me like crazy. I'm trying to get him out of my mouth. And I ended up having a pretty severe allergic reaction to that. And after taking, tons of Benadryl and all that type of stuff, I was completely out of it. The weather, the first part of Sturgis was terrible. So I was out of it, and I was not in a position I felt safe riding or anything like that. So the hotel was kind enough to offer, and hotels don't do that typically. If you pay for Sturgis in advance, and that's it. Well, these guys were nice enough to offer to not charge me for the balance of my stay, and that was almost $1,500. So I had the option of recovering and just hanging around in the hotel for 3 or 4 days, or just make a slow, safe drive home and recover on my drive home and save $1,500. So that's what I opted to do. That's why you didn't see any videos after Sturgis. And then the last one, definitely the most common question, also not really a tech question. Why hasn't there been so many videos in a long time? So for you guys that saw the building construction videos and stuff like that, me doing all this stuff myself, basically since, pretty close to the first of the year, I've been working 110-hour work weeks. So, and also it's largely, that construction delays, which I'll get into here in a second. So it basically was, me in the shop Tuesday through Friday evening at roughly 6 o'clock, pounding in a bunch of hours there, hopping in the truck, driving 6 hours here, and then working, what equated to 40, 50-hour weekends, 20-hour days, Saturday and Sunday, and a few hours on Monday morning, haul butt back to Winder, and then work a full day at the shop. And I basically was doing that virtually every week, or pretty close to every week, since almost the first of the year. And so, trying to get work done, trying to, meet customers' expectations and stuff. So there just simply wasn't enough time to make any videos. And then there were enormous delays here that were not in any way expected. I mean, I should have had internet service, back in, May really, April and May. And I didn't have internet service until I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Let's see. Yeah, it's been about 2.5 weeks ago. Main power should have been hooked up, back in March, April, but that wasn't hooked up until I got back from Sturgis. The rainy season here in Middle Tennessee, it was one of the wettest years, as I understand, that they've had almost on record. So you couldn't, the driveway was just a muddy mess. You couldn't get in and out of here. There was no way you could ride a motorcycle up here. If it rained, I mean, there was mud everywhere. You couldn't turn a truck and trailer around. Driving from the road, backing up, nearly, well over an eighth of a mile up a curvy driveway with mud instead of gravel and stuff. So it was just, the just one thing after another. And let's see. Let's get rid of that. Okay. All right, there we go. So anyway, that handles, and that's why there was no videos. So what I'm going to try to do, guys, is get back to doing a weekly video. And I've talked several times about the videos that are coming. And so, I've got a pretty good list of things that are right around the corner that we're going to be doing. And then I also would like to get back in the habit of doing a live, doing one of these lives a week. And I think that, let's see, if this Saturday thing, if you think, we'll see how it works. If Saturday morning is good, then let's do Saturday morning. All right, let's get something to drink. That's all I got for now. So I'm going to scroll back through the comments here, and let's see if we can pick some and address a few things here. Let's see. This is a great question. Jimmy asks, Glenn Mills, it's about time. I've been slacking off too much. Thanks, buddy. So Jimmy Ladd, notice the stock 114 Harleys. Some people change them out. Exposed air filter. What's your opinion on water intake due to not having a cover over the air filter? That's a very valid question. It does take quite a bit of water for it to start clogging things up in there. And if anything, just a little bit of water in there, water injection, actually, thing, that can help clean some carbon out. But too much, obviously, can stall the engine. It's obviously not good for it. There are companies out there that make covers. I think the name of the company is Outerwears. They make waterproof covers that you can just slide over the filter if it's raining, and they still breathe well and stuff like that. So so what I do is I'll get, have one of those and just keep it in the saddlebag. And if it starts raining too much, I'll slip that over there, and that'll keep a good bit of the water out. And then after the rain, obviously, you remove it. And you have to replace them depending on how often they get wet. You have to replace them like once a year, but they're only like $30 or $40. So it's it's a good idea to put something, over that. That's a good question. Let's see what's next. And David asks, how much does it cost for you to do a 124 on an M8? That's a very common comments that I get. How much is it to build this engine? How much to do this? How much to do that? Every engine that we do is a little bit different. Your needs are different. So for me to just throw a price out to you without us having, a consultation or something like that, it is really doing you an injustice, and it wouldn't at all be accurate. And it's really impossible for me to just throw a number out there because I need to talk to you first. I need to find out what your needs are, how you're going to use the bike, make recommendations, and then we also factor in your budget. And so there's a balance there, and there's risk, there's a reward, let me just answer that. You know what, David, that's a wonderful question. I'm going to answer it the easiest way I know possible. There are 5 things that are going to determine what it costs to do a performance build. 5 things. First off is the current condition of the motorcycle, current mechanical condition. Sometimes you don't know how bad one is until you tear it apart. That's a reality. You don't know if the lifter bores are too big. You don't know how bad the crank is. There's several things going on there. So that's number 1, current condition of the bike. Number 2 is your riding style. How aggressive of a rider are you? Are you hard on the throttle? Do you dump the clutch? All this type of stuff. That's the second one, is your riding style. Third is your environment. If you live in, southern Texas, or you live out in the desert or something like that, your engine's going to see a lot more abuse than one in other climates, just simply because of the heat. So we have to think of the resiliency of the parts that are going to be used. The next one is going to be how fast you want to go. That's the reality. How much power do you want? How much do you think you really need? That's a big one. Is how fast do you want to go? Because the more power you want to make, it would be irresponsible of me to not recommend the complementary parts that I know that would hold up under those power expectations, in combination with how you ride the bike. The fifth one, I think, is the most important one. And listen close, the level of confidence that you require. All right. Now, think of all of those things, and the level of confidence that you have in the stock components. Only you know how you're really going to ride that bike. Only you know the abuse that it's going to see. Do you want to know or feel more assured that when you smack that throttle, that it's going to hold together? That level of confidence is the most critical thing. Okay. And so those are the 5 things that determine what a build will cost. And as you guys know me, I'm not going to recommend something that I don't think you need. Quite often, I had one fellow that we had built a 110 for. It was, it started out as a 110. We built the crank, we did the top end, everything else. The engine was just fantastic. So it was one of our 110 plus deals. So there was headwork that got done. We bored and honed the stock cylinders. And it came down to him getting a clutch basket. A clutch basket is roughly $500. And he asked me, do I really need that? Do I really need it? And my answer was simple, because I was thinking number 5 and number 3. Are you really going to ride this thing, and what level of confidence do you? So I said, if you're the type of guy that's going to be, on Main Street in Daytona, and you're going to see a pickup truck full of pretty girls, and you want to impress those pretty girls, are you the type that's going to dump the clutch and do a burnout? No, man, I'd never do that. I'll never do that. I'm not that guy. Okay. Well, a couple months later, he picked up the bike. A couple months later, he calls me. I say, hey, man, how's Daytona? And he says, oh, man, the engine locked up. And I went, oh, no. It's the way. And what actually happened, there was a pickup truck full of pretty girls. And he did the one thing. He dumped the clutch and did a burnout. And tried to do a burnout. And the second he dumped that clutch, the clutch basket completely shattered. It shattered so violently that it cracked the inner primary, the outer primary. The primary chain climbed up on top of the compensating sprocket. The clutch basket is shattered. There's clutch pieces that are everywhere. It actually bent the crank about 10 degrees. You could see it, right? So just to take this thing apart, we were cutting stuff up just to get it apart, because everything was in a bind and it had completely locked everything up. So I felt horrible for him. And of course I worked with him, but think of all the things we had to do. We had to completely replace that perfect crank, do a complete teardown, check line bore on the cases, do all that stuff. Inner primary, outer primary, compensator, clutch basket, ring gear, primary chain, all of those things had to be replaced. And that $500 clutch basket cost him about $7,000. So, that was a valuable lesson for me, because the thing is, it only takes one time. And that, to me, is why that number 5, that your level of confidence that you want, is so important. So I think that was a great, I think that was a great question. So hope that makes sense to you guys. But I will tell you, again, I won't recommend anything that I don't think you absolutely have to have, but I will do my best to advise you and help you decide what, components you need, and help you work through that type of stuff. All right, let's see what's next. We got Dewey in here. Yeah, it is chilly. Dewey's mentioning chilly here in Tennessee this morning. Yes, it is chilly. Thanks for the compliment on the new shop there, Dave. Let's see. This is a great question here. Best bore and stroke for a bagger for long touring, no drag racing, just accumulating miles, 50% to up. I'm a fan of that. This is RDB there, Junior. Excuse me. That's a great question because the answer is actually a bit technical than anything, more than anything. So we got to remember one thing that happens: we only have so much space inside these engines geometrically. We only have so much space. So when you start doing longer strokes, the piston skirts have to get shorter too. Yeah, longer strokes, different rod lengths, and things like that. Those piston skirts have to get a little shorter. Everything in there gets tighter. Clearances get tighter, and all that stuff. I'll give you my personal opinion. I think 117 is a great option, and for me, even on long distance touring bikes, myself, I like a 117. They can make great low end torque. You've still got some stroke advantage. Well, 4 3/8, or depending on what format you use. There's different combinations of bore size and stuff you can come up with. But what I want is an engine that's going to allow me the power that I need, power that I want to have for that bike's purpose, good passing power, and I want it to also be able to have the longest piston skirts that I can have in there and stuff like that. And with longer strokes, you're also increasing piston speed. That's one thing you have to think about as well. So the longer a stroke gets, increased piston speeds. The larger that a bore gets, there's trade-offs with everything. There's for me, a 117 is my personal favorite. But for various other reasons that could take a while. So I hope that answers some question there. Man, we've got guys in here from UK. Thank you for being here. See what other questions we got. Baffles, Kenneth, baffles or no baffles to obtain max power? So baffles serve multiple purposes. One of the things that a pipe, when they're designing pipes and then designing baffles, it's about reversion and scavenging. Okay, the purpose of an exhaust system, yes, to control volume, of course. And I will say the loudest pipes always don't make the most power. Let's say that. But it's about scavenging and reversion. So air doesn't move in a pipe just in one direction, right? We've got to remember these engines. We have this offset crank timing and stuff like that. It's not a perfect 90-degree engine. So exhaust will move or gas will move in two different directions inside of an exhaust system. So one of the things a baffle does is you want to have as much scavenging as possible. That means you want to evacuate all the spent gases from the combustion chamber as quickly and efficiently as possible. You want to get that stuff out. But then you also have a reversion effect, is when fresh air gets sucked back into the exhaust. So what happens is that exhaust system is in a constant battle of preventing reversion and encouraging scavenging and that air moving back and forth. So to demonstrate that, if you think of a bike idling and what you actually hear. So, if one's idling at 750, 800 RPM, you're hearing the boom, the boom, the boom, the boom, the boom, the boom. But yet you're idling at 700, 800 RPM. Well, you have way more combustion events than what you are actually hearing, right? And that is just the most basic way I can explain that reversion effect and it moving back and forth and the sound waves. So in a baffle design, it has a lot to do with the power range of the engine and what's, modifications are being made and things like that. And sometimes you get surprised. I have seen some that would have a wide open pipe design, and with a certain cam combination or something, they make way more power than you would possibly expect. But that doesn't happen very often. It doesn't happen very often. So what I prefer is a pipe that has, ideally you'd want the longest pipe you could get, and a stepped head pipe design, and then a baffle that has a very aggressive louvered, almost spiral pattern to it. Those seem to be the ones that fight reversion the best. So if you can prevent reversion, it makes it much easier to tune, and typically will provide a more consistent running condition, better slow speed and mid throttle response, and better fuel economy as well. So I hope that answers the question. It's not always about power. We've got to think about where we ride your bike 90% of the time, and that's definitely not at wide open throttle. So anyway, New Zealand, CJ, welcome. Mr. Jackson, thank you for the kind word there, sir. Forward to the rebuild. I'm sure having ridden a pan for over 40 years, looking forward to the rebuild drift. Very cool. Yeah, I'm anxious to get started on that. No echo, perfect sound. Let's keep rolling. Okay. John Hall, we addressed yours. Chris Yu, cryogenics. What do you think of it? Would you recommend it? All engine parts or just specific parts? Yes, Chris, there are definite advantages to cryo treating. It comes down to need and how somebody's going to use these things. Would I love to cryo treat everything that goes into one? Absolutely. There's all types of thermal coatings and everything else that could be used. And when we do the big M8s, then yes, we're putting thermal coatings in the chamber, in the ports, on the valves and stuff like that. So yes, there is an advantage to it. It comes down to real need and use of the bike. So that's, part of those 5 things, right? Let's say, John Hall, the day is complete. Learned something new. Thank you, sir. Is it preferable to use ethanol-free gas? Yes. Anytime you could use ethanol-free, it's more economical. Well, it costs more. I mean, fuel economy, you roughly see about a 10% loss in fuel economy by running, that's really E85. But, you can run ethanol fuel on a regular basis, keyword being regular basis. But, if you've got a bike that's going to set up for 2 or 3 months or something like that, then I'd make sure to have ethanol free in it. Ethanol free would be my ultimate choice, but you can't always get it, and that stuff's expensive. Let's see. Digging through here. Bear with me, Seth. Sam mentions the American Prime clutch. Yeah, they're great clutches. Let's see. When is the Klotz video going to hit YouTube? Great question, Chris. I have to go to Klotz first. That's all the things I talked about in the beginning, the craziness. I haven't been able to do any of that. So I hope to do that very, very soon. I will tell you that the oil is ready to go. When we finally pull the trigger on packaging, final logo design and stuff like that. But yeah, it's ready to go. They're basically just waiting on me. Let's see. Let's see what else we got. Lots of video. Sorry, guys, we got questions coming in like crazy. Let's see. Career. Yeah, Patrick Spaz Cycle mentions there. Yeah, louvered baffles really do make a difference. There's a baffle on a 2-stroke. David asks, this is a quick question. Why I chose to build a wood frame shop instead of a metal one? Cost. That's really what it came down to, was cost. And then the ability to make it a little easier to do the build out on the inside. That's primarily what it was. So what else? All right, let's see. We had Paul G jumped in. Paul, thank you very much, sir. That's awesome. Thank you very much. That's greatly appreciated. My 21 Street Glide Special will be out of warranty soon. I currently only have slip-ons. We'll do header, suit, full stage 2. Is there any benefit going with a larger manifold, throttle body, and injectors? It has 40,000 miles. That's a great question, Paul. So if you take a look, one of the things that I would recommend on that is, looking at your intake. I would definitely, if you've got the plastic one in there, I would get rid of the plastic one and go to a metal one. S&S has a 55 millimeter that is economically priced. I think it's about $180. Of course, the Screaming Eagle one as well. So typically, what happens when you start doing bigger is the same effect is can be had not only in the front end but the back end of the engine with your exhaust and also your intake throttle body. As things get bigger, right? To a large degree, the end effect is, and this isn't always the case. It depends on the exhaust you choose and all that type of stuff. This is a good general rule. The larger an intake gets, or the shorter or larger your exhaust gets, you take your torque curve and typically you're moving it higher up in the RPM range. Most of the time, that is the end result, right? You just move that torque curve up a little bit higher. Can you make a little bit more horsepower? Sometimes, but not always. Depends on the size that you pick and the combination of the exhaust and the intake. Believe it or not, the intake and the exhaust can have a huge effect. One intake with one exhaust may not work the same if you put a different intake on there, even though you have the same exhaust. You remember, an engine's a big set of lungs. It's air in, that air goes boom, and then it's air out. So it's about air management. So I hate to say that. Is there any benefit to going with a larger manifold, throttle body, and injectors? So on the larger manifold, it depends on what your target is. If you're trying to, I would say, maximize mid-range and top end, then a larger manifold is going to promote that. Okay? And then as far as the injectors, I will say to a large degree, the injectors on an M8, the factory injectors, are marginally sized at best for a stock engine. All right. And, you're not going to see a massive power increase by doing, intake and exhaust. Not massive, right? And so is an injector something that you would absolutely have to have? No. But again, they're kind of marginal. So that depends on what size throttle body and exhaust that you would go to. I would say, I would recommend, personally, I would swap to at least maybe a 5 gram injector. A 6 may be too big, but you could do a 6, you could do a 6 gram injector in that ballpark. And that would provide you enough injector if you did a cam swap, later on down the road, so you wouldn't have to buy them twice. You could go as big as, like I typically use a 708 gram injector when we're doing cams or anything above that. And on a stock bike with just pipes, sometimes it can be a little tough to dial in that idle, just because the injector's spraying so much fuel, right? You can spray too much. So, if you've got a good tuner that can manage that, then that would be okay. So if you are going to upgrade the engine later, like you mentioned, then I would certainly consider putting in a 7 gram injector, or at least a 6, right? And then a really good tune with that. And as far as the throttle body, you may end up having to pay somebody to tune it twice. I would almost say, if you're going to do the engine work later, I would not buy a throttle body now, because what you decide to do your engine later, that throttle body you buy may not be perfectly complementary to the engine build that you do. So you may waste that money. I would say do your exhaust, and let that be it for now. Do a nice set of exhaust and see how much power it has there. Ride it for a little bit. If you're not real crazy happy with it, then maybe you could throw on a larger manifold. But be prepared that when you do that, you might reduce your low end torque a little bit. You might pick up some mid range and top end, but then it would be suitable for what you do. So I hope that answered your question, and thank you very much for the super chat there, Paul. I appreciate that. Good morning, Matt Carpenter. Good to see you, pal. William Keener. I would hold off, do it all at one time, or just stick with slip-ons for a while. That's good advice, William, as well. RDB Jr., sir, thank you so much for that super chat. I really appreciate that, sir. Thank you so much. You guys are awesome. Sam asks, one of our members, Sam's been around for a long time. If you notice his gold logo there, the TC8 ignition module timing settings. It's great to actually see some questions on carbureted stuff. Excuse me. And I hate to say there's no right answer for that, Sam, but there really isn't. I do like one of the reasons I like the TC88 module is the fact that you can custom program an ignition curve, a full 3-dimensional curve type thing. It's a wonderful, wonderful ignition module. And you can use the dials on the front that will basically advance or retard timing 5 degrees, and it'll also change the advance slope a little bit on either side. But you're really not getting the most out of that ignition without having the little USB module that you can buy with it and then custom programming that thing. But a good place to start, I would say, if you had a build, somewhere around the 9.5 to 10 to 1 range, that I would set that module at somewhere around, say, 3 and 3, for initial and advanced slope. Then I would also set it on mode 1. Which is going to activate the multi-spark, and then do some tuning on your carb. The best answer I can give you. You give an engine what it wants, and it'll be very, very, very happy. Paul G again, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Partner HD, if you could order a bike with a Baxter built motor, wouldn't that be awesome? Would that be cool? EPA may not like that, but. Anyway, Kevin and Deloro, what's the best way to contact me at this time, sir? By email. And I'm still having phone issues, everything else. And the reason, and I do want to mention this, the reason it's been impossible to get a hold of me is, remember, I was up here most of the time, and it seems that where I'm located, I'm right between cell phone towers. So 5G didn't work, 4G would barely work, but anytime I tried to send or receive an email or get online or do anything, something about the way the phone company told me it was like data packets, and I'm stuck between these two towers, and it couldn't send and receive email. One would barely get through. My cell phone wouldn't work at all inside the building. No phone service, no internet for several months. And so that was a battle in itself. But I would say to get in touch with me is shoot me an email, and that's really the best way. You can go on the website there, and we've got a contact us page and stuff like that at the Baxter's Garage website. So that's really the best way, Kevin, and I would do my best to get in touch with you and respond. But just got a lot of irons in the fire at this point. Let's see. 3 and 3, thanks. Always on Multispark. Good choice there, Sam. William, thank you for the kind words, sir. Thanks for being in there with us. All right, so it is 10:49. I'm scrolling through questions here. Let's see what we can find. Would love a discussion and your expertise on primary chain tensioners. That's actually a good one. I'll answer that one here in just a second. Advice on choosing a cam. Let's handle those, and then we're going to do the speed round, guys. And then we'll jump into the speed round, but hang on before we start it. Wait till I say go. So while I'm answering these two questions, you guys get your speed round questions in your mind. And there won't be explanations. I'm going to answer your questions, bam, 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 and we're going to hammer through them like crazy. So I'll start with and this is, wait till I say go on the speed round, just get them ready. Get them ready, because I'm not even going to look at the camera. I have to look at my screen. Anyway, primary chain adjuster, do you recommend? We typically, man, it's hard to say. I've used a lot of the Baker ones. We've used a lot of the Hayden ones, and I know Southern Oregon Hot Bikes has their hydraulic one. And the only thing I know to do is be transparent and tell you, my experience. I used a lot of the Southern Oregon Hot Bikes ones when they first came out years and years ago before the automatics came out. And I used a lot of them and never had a problem. I actually ran one on my own bike, but it has been, man, it's had to have been 10 years or so since I ordered one from them. Not for any real reason. I never had a problem with them. I just didn't run them. Went to the Baker ones for a while, and the prices went up significantly on those things. So then I started using the Hayden ones and testing a bunch of them to see how they were working in the field. I heard a lot of good things from people that nobody was having any, horrible problems out of them. And they are more economical than the Baker ones. So we've been running a lot of the Hayden ones, but just like so many other things, there was their supply, their ability to supply raw material shortages and all that stuff. The world is still feeling that stuff. Manufacturers are still dealing with those. So there was, we had people that had placed orders for those things like crazy, and they were just on constant and ongoing back orders constantly. You always had them ordered. It comes down to supply and all this stuff, but a Baker versus the Hayden price, this, that, and the other. But I say that they both work really well, and I haven't run the Southern Oregon one in a long time, so hope that helps. All right, let's roll down here. Again, thanks to Paul and RDB for your super chat, guys. Mike Jones, am I still talking? He just got here. Knucking Futz. I haven't seen that one in a while. Man, glad you're here, pal. Hit the like, slackers. There you go. I'm digging it. Okay, y'all ready to start with the speed round? This is the fun part because we've got about 10 minutes. All right. So we're going to officially start the speed round right now, and we're going to worm through this as quick as we can. 2006 Dyna changed from the Hydro. If you're talking cam tensioners, then 2006 Dyna was the first with the Hydro. Cam tune warranty ends. Trailer and 2-up riding. I would have a conversation on your trailer and 2-up riding. Have a conversation with the guys from Olin's. Also have a conversation with the guys from Legends, Olin's, and then maybe give a phone call to a company called Traction Dynamics in Georgia. They're wonderful suspension guys. I would call those three people, get their opinion on that. Myself, I'm not a huge fan of air shocks. I prefer a shock that I'm not a huge fan, but you do what you believe is correct for you. Tri-glides can be tuned after a build. It's done while riding. Data collection. I think that's the best way to tune a trike is actually on the road in real road conditions. So yes, tri-glides can be tuned after a build very, very easily. Favorite oil filter would be either a high flow Filtro or a Twin Power. Twin Power is the house brand for Tucker Rocky. It's a great, wonderful filter. I've cut them things open. They have an enormous amount of filter media in them. They're very well constructed and economically priced, and they filter great. They don't go into bypass prematurely, all of that. Any bike in the world, what would you choose and why? That's a good one. I think FXR 71 that I've got to finish. I've got to finish that one. And a hot rod shovel head bagger. Those would be the two. I'm not a huge fan of serviceable oil filters because I'm not 100% certain if I can get it as clean as putting on a new filter. I don't have test equipment to make sure that it is clean, do flow rate tests and all this other type of stuff. Excuse me. Plus, it's kind of a mess to deal with. because I can't, I can look and see that it's clean, but there's a lot of particulate in there that you can't see. So in my opinion, I'm not as huge of a fan on the serviceable. But that's just, I haven't had a bad experience with one. That's just my personal opinion. So for whatever that's worth. Auto tuning is a bit of a misnomer. People will think that auto tuning means that system is completely tuning itself, and that's not really the case. Some of the newer systems now, like with Power Vision, can make some changes to timing, which historically that didn't happen, and then it will also automatically tune the fuel. Now, keep in mind what that means. The system is not choosing the correct air-fuel ratio for the engine. It is making sure that the engine is running at the air-fuel ratio that someone told it to. Tuning is about more than just, it automatically adjusting the fuel rate. Someone has to tell that tuning system what the proper air-fuel ratio is for that engine. Plus, you have cranking fuel, you have D-cell, X-cell, PE enhancement fuel, all that type of stuff. So tuning is about more than just making sure it's dialed in and staying there. There should be a human interaction that sets that air-fuel ratio to what's appropriate for that engine and your riding style. Then the system can take over and make sure that it stays to that air-fuel ratio you hold it to. Crankshaft sensor location on twin cams is going to be, if you look at where your oil filter is, just to the right of the oil filter on the case, right behind the primary, you'll find it there. It's round, and it has a little oval plastic flange and a wire coming out of it. It would also have an Allen bolt holding it in place. Next little, I think we have 106,000 miles. I would, with that many miles, Nick, I would certainly, I would look at replacing the bearing and the races in there with that many miles. Those bearings don't wear necessarily all the way around. They take a lot of impact, and they're only, in this area right here. So, you could try just tightening the neck bearing a little bit and do the follow on a Road King would be a swing test. And kind of do the swing test on that. I think it's like 2.5 swings. Tighten it up a little bit, but you got to disconnect all your cables and everything else when you do that, so it swings free. And then maybe tighten it a little bit more to your liking. Sometimes I'll tighten them just a little bit more than that. This is how it rides, but with that many miles, man, they may not be worn out, but it's worth taking a look. Daryl, I don't have an opinion on that cam. I haven't run it. I'm not familiar with the specs off the top of my head, so I don't really have an opinion on that. I know Russ designed some pretty dang good cams, and he has a history of that particular one. I don't have any. William Call, it's Traction Dynamics, TRAXXION, Traction Dynamics. I believe they're still in Woodstock, Georgia. Have them, when you call them, tell them I said hello. Baker DD7 on it's watching your video. Perfect. When we as we're working through this backlog and everything, we're basically bringing in, roughly 5 bikes at a time. I get them tore down, get things into the machine shop. We bring in another set of bikes to do tear down. Then I'm machining the first 5, machining the second, and then we're going to be on a rolling program like that where we have basically 5 coming in and out, at a time. So, and we're working diligently through that. We've gotten our first batch of bikes in here already. I'm almost done with all those tear downs, and things are progressing with those. And so all of you that are in that backlog, we're going to be calling you shortly to start scheduling your bike in. Doug, I've not watched that video. Man. Oh, an Ultra, 80,000 miles, 103 kit. Bottom and be okay going forward. CJ, I can't really answer that question, bud. 80,000 miles can be a lot of miles. I've seen these things go a lot longer than that. I know '08 and '09 were tough years, specifically for bottom ends for twin cams. I would be afraid to advise you on an answer on that, buddy. That could be a 150,000 mile engine for all I know. So 1,000 miles into B3. Okay. Thoughts on exhaust running a twin cam with cams for X-style crossover head pipe. Dang, Mr. Keener, look at that. He bought 10 of his buddies' memberships. Man, that's stand up for you. I mean, your buddies owe you a big thanks, and so do I. Thank you, William. I appreciate that, sir. Killer Machine Work, thanks for the kind words. Thoughts on exhaust running a twin cam 103 with cams, air filter, X-style crossover head pipe. 2-1. That's a great question, Ryan. And, typically, exhaust can be so finicky, man. That question is, what's the best exhaust? Sometimes it's based on your riding style, what modifications, what cam you're running. There's so many variables that come into this stuff, and I don't want to overcomplicate it for you. But I would say basically look at it, look at product categories. So there's the true dual category. Then there's the 2-1 category that I would also group in H-pipe, crossovers, X-pipe, that into that category. And then a 2-1. Let's consider those three categories. As a general rule, but man, sometimes I get surprised on this stuff, and so, but I'm going to say generically, almost always a 2-1 will produce more low mid-range torque and quite often more horsepower than a 2-1-2 would, or X-pipe or whatever. But some people don't like the sound of a 2-1. Okay. The 2-1-2s, I've seen some of them make some great power, but they tend to not, again, general rule stuff here, they tend not to make as much low to mid-range torque and have the same throttle response that a really good 2-1 would. Now, there are some 2-1s out there that aren't great at all. So I would say if you're, depending on the cam you're running, what power range you want to be in, the longer pipe with a more aggressive baffle, that maybe even the smaller head tube pipe will typically produce the most low to mid-range torque. As a pipe gets shorter, baffle gets bigger, baffle gets smoother. Most of the time, that torque curve is going to move higher up in the RPM. So, hope that helps. And I will say, just looking at a company's dyno sheet is not going to tell you that. Remember, a dyno sheet is an indication of max output in fourth or fifth gear, whatever gear they're running it in that condition. So that doesn't tell you how necessarily it's going to act under normal driving conditions, roll on and all that. So, one thing that you could do is maybe call a couple of dealers in your area that have some used bikes in inventory that are very similar to what you have. Just call around, and then maybe you could ride those bikes, just take them for a test ride and see which pipe you like, what you like the look and the sound of. And then read the characteristics of those pipes, if they're geared more toward low to mid range. And maybe that'll help you. Just viewers on your live net buddies. Thanks, man. I appreciate that, William. Thank you very much. 124. Efficient. There's nothing wrong with the 550. I've built, and again, we're looking at every individual customer and how you're going to use your bike. I've built 124s and 124s and 128s using 465 cams, 475s, the Redshift 468s, the 472s. I've used the S&S 475s, the 465s. So, and what those engines do is make an insane amount of low-end torque. I mean, it is absolutely instant. And but these people, they rode at lower RPMs, so the 550 is definitely sufficient for a 124. It's your riding style, where you want the power to be, what you want that torque curve to look like. And remember, the bike with the highest peak torque is not always the fastest bike. I tend to look at the average area underneath the torque curve. That typically will produce a higher rate of acceleration, an area under the horsepower curve. So that's definitely sufficient. Remember, on an M8, a lot of folks these days, you're thinking 2-valve. You don't have 2-valve anymore, you've got 4. So you have significantly more valve area under the valve, because you now have 2 intake valves. Yeah, they're smaller than the one, but when you add the 2 together, it's about area. I did a video on that, on why M8s make more power, and I would strongly encourage people to watch that one. So you don't need cams as big on a 4-valve head as you need it on a 2-valve head, because you've already got more valve area as it is. So bigger is not always better. Rattle and front fork, 70,000 miles, fresh fork oil. Cure it, more than likely not. With 70,000 miles, if those forks have never been rebuilt, I see 50,000 miles typically as about the maximum. You probably need new slider and slide bushings and guide bushings in those forks. Let's see. Follow the protocol is remarkable. Sam, thank you, sir. I appreciate that very much. Patriot Defender 2-1. I can't give you an opinion on that one, sir. I don't recall ever working with one of those pipes. I can't give you any. D&D just put on 2017 Breakout. Awesome. Yes, we find that the D&D does perform very, very well. I see great things out of Reinhardt's. Both their 2-1 into 2 for M8s, and also that works great. Bassani's are fantastic too. So we're seeing great things out of those companies for sure, and we use a lot of them on a regular basis. Yeah, again, a big shout out there to William for gifting those memberships. That's just absolutely awesome. See any oil transfer on my bike? See you soon with a case of water. Like, guy. Yeah, Matt's bike is in here, and I'm starting tear downs and all this other kind of stuff. There is a bit of oil transfer there, buddy. And we're going to dig into that as well. And you and I will have a phone call next week after the weekend, and we'll go through everything that we found on the tear down. Matt, I'm probably going to call you. I'm going to say probably on Tuesday or Wednesday, and then we'll discuss everything found. 64 mil throttle body. Will that cam? Looking for horsepower. Bigger's not always better. I would talk to folks, see if you can find some people that have done that exact combination with that cam. I have a feeling that what you'll see is, again, sliding the torque curve a little higher in the RPM range. You may see a peak torque increase. You probably will see horsepower increase as well at the top end. I've never ran that exact combination, so I can't say specifically. Bigger is not always better, guys. Remember that. Let's see. 85 to get the numbers on the dyno charts. You can tune more aggressive with the 85 for sure. Higher octane and all that type of stuff. You're welcome, Kay. You're welcome very much. Thanks for being here. So if you guys think that this would be a great time, we may continue to do things on Saturday. I'd love to hear your comments. I know we have a lot of guys that work and guys in other countries across the planet. The time doesn't work too well for them. But, I keep these videos up so they can always go back and watch. 132. But the 3030 numbers were larger when we put the 540 cam into it, surprisingly. Patrick, that's... sometimes, it's early intake close, that overlap, that duration. A lower duration cam will typically produce more low to mid-range torque, shorter duration. Sometimes shorter lifts will drastically increase port velocity, which can also increase cylinder fill percentage, almost like supercharging a little bit and produce more power. So yeah, it's all about the combinations, air in and air out. It's all about air management. And Sarah, because okay. All right. So Guys, I think that may wrap it up. We went a few minutes over. What do y'all think about today's show? I will close on this. A lot of folks talk about when we're talking about cylinder heads. I think I may end up doing a video at some point on the top 5 myths on cylinder heads. Top 5 myths on cylinder head porting. And I'll leave you with this to think about. A lot of head porting and stuff is advertised on CFM. And that's the volume, cubic feet per minute. That's the volume of air that can flow through that port at a particular valve lift with, different throttle body sizes and things like that. It's how much air it can move. Not so much a measure of velocity. Sometimes, ports can be smaller, and you get to take an advantage of port velocity and achieve a better cylinder fill percentage, which in the end can produce a lot more power. In other words, you can go too big with ports. You can go too big with valve sizes. And so there is a science to it, and sometimes an engine has to be built. There has to be a lot of tests done, and repetition, different cams and things like that, in order to be able to to maximize that output. But it also comes down to power range, where you want that power to be, and your riding style. So just something for you guys to think about. Bigger's not always better. Bigger cams do not always make more power. Bigger throttle bodies do not always make more power. And bigger exhaust not always make more power. It's the combination of things. All right, let's see. Got any thumbs up? Need to do one on compensator delete and the issues with it. A lot of folks on Facebook talk about doing that and with the known issues. That is a bit of a controversial topic there. Thank you, Mr. Michael Jones, for bringing that up. Let's end with that question right there. So this will be the last one, guys, and then we're going to bounce out of here. I am not a fan on compensator delete because we have to remember what a compensator is there for. It's designed to absorb engine pulses and help reduce the transfer of those pulses through the rest of the drivetrain. That's what it does. It kind of softens those pulses. Now, doing a delete on a belt drive, of course, all belt drives have solid front, belt pulleys on them. We have to remember when you run a belt drive, a belt will absorb that shock load. Belt can do that. But I have found from my experience that most folks that I have talked to that over all of these years that have put the deletes on, if they'll be honest with me, they'll tell me they can feel a lot more vibration. They can feel the transfer of vibration, and they're not a big fan of that. I've had many that have put them on only to turn around and take them back off. Mechanically speaking, what I see is an opportunity for that harmonic transfer of vibration. That it could cause, excessive wear on a chain, excessive wear in the transmission, main bearings, things like that. It's very similar to why I would never recommend removing a balancer from a soft-tail engine, be it an M8 or be it a twin cam, unless you were absolutely racing the thing. And so because when you remove those balancers, you have a solid rigid mount engine bolted into the frame. You transfer that vibration that would be absorbed by the balancers to a large degree. You transfer that now into the engine and the internal engine component and the harmonic frequency, essentially reducing the life of the bearings and the internal components and that of the engine. And so, me and the guys at Dark Horse have talked in length about that issue for many, many years. So, I feel pretty much the same way about doing the compensator delete. I know some wouldn't agree with what I have to say, but that's why Baskin Robbins has 31 flavors. Right? So I personally would not be a fan of it. I would not be a fan. But anyway, and the other thing is practical. Let me add this to it. I haven't seen bikes that have come to me for teardowns that have had very high mileage running a compensator. I haven't had the opportunity to see that, but I have talked to people that have, and they tell me about what they see, and it's almost like bearings just beat themselves to death, and main bearings and transmission. So I kind of have to go along with that. It seems to make. All right. Friends, that's going to do it for this Saturday. It's 11:15. We ran for an hour and 15 minutes. We did do a 15 over. I know I didn't get to everyone's question, and I do apologize for that, but I think we covered quite a few things. You guys feel good about it? I want to thank you all for being here, and I want to thank all of our members for continuing to support the channel. I want to appreciate all your patience. You guys sticking in there with me through this crazy move and everything else. No, the building is not done 100%, man. It's not even close. I haven't hung doorknobs. I just hung doors the other day, in the bathroom. I'm still hanging doors, and then Monday I have the final electrical inspection. So we'll see how that goes. And I'm got my fingers crossed on that one. The final, there was a lot of wiring in this building. I wired this entire building myself, and there's over 5,600 feet. That's over a mile. There's over 5,600 feet of wire in this building. Insane. Plus the 3-phase and the outlets and all these other things. So it was quite a project. So fingers crossed for me, guys, on that final electrical inspection coming up on Monday. Let's see. Sent viewers. Thumbs up. Guys, let's see. What about doing hangout on time after work hours? Yeah, possibly. Maybe we could do some of that. I know I used to do some of them hangout videos. Let's see, William, 55 millimeter with 5.5 injectors, 470. Pull the front wheel off the ground. Yeah, great choice. That's, again, short duration, early intake close, that sort of thing. Good choice. All right, guys. I am, I miss having you around here too, Mike. Flying solo in this place. It's kind of interesting. It's therapeutic, but at the same time, you get lost in your days sometimes. There's been days I haven't even walked out of this building. So, I miss you guys too. But anyway, my friends, I'm signing off. Members only video is going to be Patrick. I'm going to venture to say, if you could give me a couple of weeks, I want to throw something pretty awesome at you. So we're going to do that. Thanks a million, guys. I am signing off, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for being here. You guys are awesome. Thanks for participating. And I wish all of you the very best, as always. Take care of yourselves. Anybody want to finish that? And each other. Thumbs up, guys. Have a great weekend.